Has the Edinburgh Fringe lost its cutting edge? Well, welcome to Mark and Pete. Here's a thought.
Hair-raising comedy. Cutting comedy will help your head unhinge as you tear your hair out to laugh or whinge. So if the cream of the crop makes you cringe, that's the effect of the Edinburgh Fringe. Ho, ho,
Yes.
ho. Yes, well, there you go. It's all about cutting comedy, cutting-edged humour. Now, there's also entertainment and lots of other acts that will go to the Edinburgh Fringe. This is indeed one of the world's largest performance festivals. It's been going since 1947. Now, as we've seen over the years, that many acts have emerged. Some of them have become household names. We'll talk about that later. But Clergyman Pete, I ask you, with the woke world that we're living in today, is the Edinburgh Fringe still relevant today?
Well, it's relevant certainly in that it's good to have that sort of large outlet for a large outlet for small productions where you can experiment. I mean, there is an Edinburgh Festival, hence the Edinburgh Fringe, which is more mainstream in larger theatres, although a lot of the Fringe is actually in pretty big theatres as well. You know, it's in proper theatres, properly produced. But yeah, I think it is. But I think the problem, maybe particularly recently, or maybe it's happened before, but and people have come through it. But what seems to have happened is, although it retains some relevance, it seems to, is the phrase gone native, or I suppose it's gone woke.
Exactly.
In that it's taken on the sort of woke ideology, which is really, what's assumed to be true by mainstream theatre thinking, globalist thinking, the normal point of view within media and the arts is the sort of woke view, the anti-colonialist, pro-LGBT plus all that, this sort of thing, a couple of years ago, great enthusiasm for injecting people with vaccines and all that sort of thing. All part of the it's all part of what is believed to be true by the elite. So you're not really cutting edge if you're just believing and putting forward ideas that people believe anyway. And not only that, but the people who run the show, as in the country, etc., believe it anyway. And it does look like quite a few acts in the Edinburgh Fringe have gone that way. They've rather than critiquing such ideas, which would surely be more cutting edge.
Well, indeed. In fact, over the years, certainly very well-known names have emerged. Dudley Moore actually was there when he actually was part of a group in the 1950s, but of course he went on to gain fame later with Peter Cook in the 60s and 70s onwards. Now, the fact is that there are other people who have also notably sort of used their cutting-edge humour, the differences, to actually stand out. Alexi Sale, somebody who is a great comedian, still operating today, but he actually emerged during the early 1980s. And he actually said, this is a quote that he said, is the Fringe then was entirely university reviews and plays. There was not a single piece of stand-up comedy until me and Tony Allen arrived. Well, whether that was true or not is a different matter. But the fact is that cutting-edge humour is something that really you typically tend to sort of see. It's not just that, of course. Of course, there are actors and performers and dancers and many other things that sort of form the Fringe. But here's the point. The idea is what you really are looking for is new talent, isn't it? You want something that's different. Now, in order to be different, you've got to really penetrate the narrative of the day, whatever the day is. Now, at the moment, I think it's reasonable to say we have the woke blanket that's sort of shrouded over almost everything, to the point where, certainly for comedians, that is, it's quite difficult to know where you can cut your way through this blanket. So, Clergyman Pete, is it now really that maybe the fringe has moved more away from cutting edge humor because there just isn't that scope and it's not allowed, or is it now for just actors and dancers?
The wet blanket that you refer to is really, I would say, due to cancel culture. People are afraid to be cutting edge. So there were a few shows in the Edinburgh Fringe. There's Ahir Shah, who's taking the mainstream view of immigration as though it was something new. There's Weir by Natalie Palamides, who explores, according to her blurb, gender and relationships in an unconventional format, playing both halves of a couple simultaneously. Now, that's an interesting format that you could say is quite cutting edge, but it's the usual woke stuff about being queer. And is the Wi-Fi good in hell by Dev? Now, that explores the journey of a young gay man moving from a small town to a big city, and obviously people hating him because he's gay. In other words, the usual woke view of things. Now, I'm not sure, this isn't a comment on whether it's true or not. Obviously, we think that generally the woke view is generally wrong, mistaken, but that's not the point. The point is that it's already accepted by everyone, so it's hardly cutting edge. In fact, to go against that would be cutting edge. To have a play in which being homosexual was seen as being wrong and was shown to be somehow perverted. Just in saying those words, just imagine that would be cutting edge. People would be shocked. I tell you.
Yes.
I mean, there are around the world there are these comedy festivals. At least I know it's not just comedy at the Edinburgh Fringe, as you were noting, but there is even a festival called the Unwoke Comedy Festival, which plays in different locations around the world. So they do exist, but the Edinburgh Fringe is bigger than these and is more varied in what it has there. It'd be good if you had some people with just getting some balls and actually criticising the accepted view on things in a clever and format breaking way.
Well, now, I think a lot of our listeners will be keen to know that typically, as you say, the Fringe and the festival is not just about humour, but let's focus on the humour. And of course, typically what often will happen is there is an award, isn't there, for the best joke. So here's a call out to just a few. So, in 2023, the best joke, as deemed, was as follows by Lorna Rose Treen. And it said, I started dating a zookeeper, but it turned out he was a cheater. Indeed. Maybe not as good as we would like. But here's the one the previous year, which is 2022. And this was from Masai Graham. I tried to steal spaghetti from the shop, but when the female guard saw me, I couldn't get past her. Possibly amusing.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Reasonably amusing. But here's a few that I did like, which is Ken Cheng in 2017. You can see we're going back in time now, folks. I'm not a fan of the new pound coin, but then again, I hate all change. But my favourite is in 2014, our hero, Tim Vine. He said, as the winner, I've decided to sell my Hoover. Well, it was just collecting dust. So maybe the puns win the day. But the point here is that there's nothing really offensive about that as such, although there are some that you could argue, if you look back through history, folks, possibly might get people to cringe a little bit at the Fringe. So, yes, it's interesting, isn't it, that some of those that are the ones that are more successful are a little bit edgy. Those that are a bit different and possibly sort of attack our conventional thinking. And I just wonder now whether we're ever going to see the end of this sort of wokeism. Because the comedy festivals, as well as even talent, we've seen, shows like America's Got Talent, Britain's Got Talent, open up a world where perhaps, you wouldn't normally see certain acts come, whether they are jugglers, whether they've got unusual comedy acts, or whether they've got something unusual in terms of the performances that they offer. But do you think, though, that it's I think we have to really be honest, that there are very few acts that surface from the Fringe or even the festival that actually go on to make it as a full-time profession and last the course of time. But even though we've called out a few names that we know and love today, it's for the tens of thousands of people over the years, if not even hundreds of thousands, because typically even at one Fringe there are tens of thousands of acts that go there. Only a few ever surface. What do you think is the ingredient that makes them stand out?
Well, it's difficult because it has to be something new and original. So as soon as I say it, it's no longer new and original. But just to tell you my experience back in the 80s when I went to the Edinburgh Fringe, I performed there, and I went to see quite a few different plays and comedy shows. One was the first outing by the Reduced Shakespeare Company, which became very successful.
Yeah.
Which had the idea of having Shakespeare but making it shorter, and made fun of Shakespeare, but in a loving way. So it was just, no one had done that before. Interestingly, my show that I was on was doing a similar thing.
Yeah.
And so what was different? Well, the difference was that theirs was better. It was the same idea virtually, but theirs was better. Mine was called All's Well That Ends. Yeah,
well done.
The humour was not quite as good, and so it's about choosing something that someone else hasn't yet thought of. I mean, we separately came up with similar ideas, but it's how well they're executed too. It's both together that do it and make it a good show. Now, when we're looking at something and say, it's not as cutting edge as it used to be, that's a particular criticism. It's actually not a criticism of how good the show is. It could be very well produced, but you need both in order to be effective. There's no good you being absolutely cutting edge and being rubbish.
Yes. Well, indeed. Well, now, what interesting for our viewers and listeners on our show is that Masai Graham and Tim Vine are the only acts to win the comedy award. That's the best known, more than once.
Yes.
Actually, Masai has won it 3 times, and Tim has currently only had 2. And so here's one of Tim Vine's. This was back in 2010. We love him because we think he's great. I've just been on a once-in-a-lifetime holiday. I'll tell you what, never again. Yes, well, there you go. It's all in the way you tell them.
Yes, it is the way you tell them. Yeah, but I think as we draw this particular show to this episode to a close, we'd just like to hear from you. Let us know, gentle listener, whether what your thoughts are on the Edinburgh Fringe, and of course tell us any jokes or improvements on ones that are there. Just get in touch with the show. Go to markandpete.com. Make sure you're subscribed, and you can leave a comment on this and in fact every episode. It's always great to hear from you. But for Mark and myself, it's goodbye for now, and I'll catch you next time.